This is about the last telephone conversation that I had with Ross. I was calling him from Saint-Gervais, where I was living in France, and was telling him about my suffering, as usual there. Been suffering there for a couple of years. And he was telling me about his concerns about good and evil, basically. And he was concerned that the demons were trying to get him. And he was concerned whether he could right wrongs and whether he was worthy of being saved, being forgiven for his transgressions. And that's basically what we talked about. And of course, I don't know everything that Ross did, so I don't know what he considered to be his worst transgressions, but I do remember asking him, if he killed or tortured or maimed people. So I don't think he had done that. And I didn't pretend to lecture him about anything, or I didn't pretend to claim to know. I just sort of asked questions and made references. And I remember mentioning that didn't he think it was interesting that all of the imagery and dichotomies that he was mentioning were Christian, and that how, depending on where we were raised and how we were raised, our fears and our concerns would be generated in basically as a reflection of that. So the questions that he was posing and the way he was framing his questions and his concern wouldn't be the ways that I would frame them, because I was not raised as a Christian in the Christian ideology, and I don't buy into that whole thing. And so I just sort of mentioned to him that intellectually he should totally understand that and recognize that, and just keep that in mind when he is cruising down the rabbit hole, that he could be forming his argument or his internal dialogue in a completely different way that wouldn't include demons at all, and that wouldn't include forgiveness at all, and wouldn't even include the question of whether he was worth being forgiven. So basically I kind of stayed on that level, tried not to get too preachy, and tried to keep him talking about what he was talking about, and reminding him how it could be that we were talking about is so artificial and purely haphazardly based on our own experience and brainwashing, right? I mean, how postmodern is that, right? The illusion of identity and the illusion of belief, and how it's all interchangeable based on who had you the longest and where you lived. So he was talking to me about that stuff, and he was concerned, and he was talking to me also about hearing voices, and that he wasn't really sure if they were real or not. And again, we went down the path of talking about imagine the very first person who realized that the voice that was in their head was their own voice, was their own brain, and that it wasn't some spirit talking to them. I remember reading a book saying that it was the first shamans were the ones who had figured that out, that it was their own inner voice, and that they were speaking to themselves, and it wasn't the voice of an external spirit. But anyway, so I just sort of mentioned again in that way that the brain was very powerful, our emotions are very powerful, and that we could create voices in all kinds of ways. And besides that, we could have chemical imbalances that would make us believe that we were different, schizophrenia and all that sort of thing. So we kind of talked back and forth like that, and I was sort of, again, trying to remind him that we create our own realities on certain levels, and then on other levels our realities were completely created by others. And then just trying to remind him that he had the power to decide, if he could, what those voices were saying, how they responded, and whose identity he gave them. And so we just kind of spun around in circles about that while he talked about what he was going through. And I remember at the time wondering if I should be worried, and I can't remember if I called and left messages with the Grody clan thereafter. I'd have to check out my agenda, and if any of you are curious about the date of when I spoke with him, I could probably look up in my calendar to see if I noted it, and I could check my emails to see if I sent anything to anybody, because I've been in situations like that before, and it doesn't always turn out well. So but I was also going through my own trip, and my voices were all external, so I was a little bit distracted. Anyways, that was my last conversation with him, and alright, I'm out of here.